Tony's going to read our scripture for us today. It's on the front of your bulletin. Mark 5, verse 7.
And he shouted in a loud voice, "What do you want with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I beg you, before God, do not torture me."
Thank you, Tony. That story you can find in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. In Matthew, it's actually two guys that come up to Jesus. In Mark and Luke, it's just one. I use Mark today because it's more detailed about what this whole story is about. In this verse, a man comes up to Jesus who is possessed by a legion of demons. First of all, he acknowledges that Jesus is the Son of God. And then he basically prays to him, "Do not torment me." Those demons that are in that man recognize Jesus' authority, they recognize his power, and they also recognize the fact that if Jesus wants to, he can torment them. He shouted at the top of his voice, just like Tony did when he read it. That means that he was being urgent. You know, he wanted to make sure that Jesus heard what he was saying, making sure he got his attention. And then he says, "What do you want with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God?" He acknowledges that this person that he's that he is on his knees in front of is the Son of God. The demons in this man plead with Jesus and acknowledge the fact that he is the Son of God. And then they say, "Don't torture me." They also acknowledge that Jesus has power, that he could torment them if he wanted to, and had the potential to do whatever he wanted to with them. Now, what are the demons? These are the fallen angels. When Lucifer was sent to earth and kicked out of heaven, he took thousands of angels with him. And that's what these are in this man that possess this man. Now this verse 7, is part of a much larger narrative, a much larger story that I'm going to go over in just a minute. That some of it you've heard, a couple parts of it I know you've heard before. This part you've probably never really looked at in detail, because I don't think I've ever heard a preacher preach on that particular verse and what it actually means. But you need to remember that this is the part of this story that you probably, there's a part before this that I'm going to tell you about in a few minutes. The part of this story that you probably remember or have heard about many times. What did Jesus do with those demons? He cast them out and into a herd of pigs. And then those pigs ran down a cliff and into the river or the Sea of Galilee, I guess it would have been, and died. I'm not going to talk about that part today, but I do want to bring one thing up to you and get you to think about this. When that happened, when those demons went into those pigs and died in the Sea of Galilee, did the demons die? Was Jesus destroying the demons? No, you cannot. They are not biological beings like us. The demons are fallen angels. They are spirit beings. They cannot be destroyed. God created angels to last forever. He created your soul to last forever also. But our bodies, our biological bodies, demons and angels do not have biological bodies like ours that deteriorate and die. So why did the pigs run into the water and drown? Have you ever wondered that? Here's my thought. May not be true, but here's my thought. Jesus put those demons in those pigs. That's where you're going to be. The only way those demons knew that they could get out of those pigs was to kill the pigs. So the demons made the pigs run into the water and drown, which freed the demons from the dead bodies of the pigs. That's my thought. Yours, whatever you want to think. I don't know. But that's the way I look at it. Terry, what you think? That's possibly. We're not told in the Bible why the pigs ran into the water. We're just told that they went into the water and drowned and died. And I think it was the demons knowing that that was the only way they were going to get out of those pigs, because Jesus had put them there. Maybe it's torment to possess a pig. I don't know. I bet it is, you know. But this whole story starts back at the beginning of chapter 5 in Mark. And when it gets to this part in chapter 5, Jesus gets off the boat on the eastern side of the Sea of Galilee, the right side of the Sea of Galilee, at a region called Gerasene. Gerasene. There's a little town there the area is called Gerasene, and there's a little town there on the banks of the Sea of Galilee on the eastern side. And Jesus gets off the boat, and this man comes running up to him. On the side of the hills there are nothing but tombs. You know, back then they didn't dig graves and bury people so much. They'd find a hole in the rock or dig one out, and they'd put them in there and cover it up, like Jesus' tomb, for instance. And there were a lot of tombs out here, and that's where this guy was living. He was living amongst these tombs. He was uncontrollably strong because he broke chains, and he was cutting himself with rocks, and he was greatly demon-possessed. Jesus' interaction with this guy shows, without a doubt, his absolute authority over evil spirits. A legion of demons, possibly numbering in the thousands, were in this guy. And they begged him, which the guy runs up and gets on his knees. First he says, Son of God, and then he begs him, don't torment me. That almost sounds like a prayer, doesn't it? It's almost like these demons that were occupying this man were literally praying to Jesus, don't torment us. The story tells us that no one is beyond hope. Here's a man that lives in the tombs, in the rocks, no family, nobody to take care of him. The people of that town had bound him with chains because they were so afraid of him. And those demons had so much power that he broke the chains. They didn't want anything to do with him. He lived among the tombs, so to them, he was already dead. But he had all this power, and it shows us that even someone like that is not beyond hope. Regardless of how deeply entrenched someone may be in sin or broken, Jesus still has the power to deliver and take care of them and restore them. So this is the beginning of the story. Jesus was on the other side of Galilee, and he had just done some preaching about the kingdom of God, and he decides that they're going to get on the boat in the nighttime and go across the sea to get a little R&R on the other side of the Galilee. And you know, that's the night when the storm came up, and they woke up Jesus and said, oh no, we're fixing to die, it's storming. And Jesus said, oh, you have little faith, calm down, see. It just says, y'all chill out. The disciples and the sea, and both did. And they made it to the other side. I can imagine that was a scary night going across the Sea of Galilee. And I've told you before, because of the way the sea is set up, the winds come down off the mountain and churn up the sea a lot. And that's what was happening this night. And Jesus just simply calms it down, and they make it to the other side of the Sea of Galilee, and that's where Jesus encounters this guy. And the description that Mark gives of him is one of the most wretched human beings in the Bible. Imagine someone possessed, overly possessed, by thousands of demons. That reminds me, when I was young, we were all sitting around one night, and I was going to play a joke on some of my siblings, and I said, one of us here is possessed by an owl. And Mike says, who? According to Jewish law, an encounter with such a person as this was against the law, because this guy was totally unclean. In one of the Gospels, it tells us that he's living out here unclothed, bleeding from cuts that he caused to himself with rocks. And an encounter with any person, with this person, would be considered an encounter with an unclean or demon-possessed person, which was against the law according to Jewish law. He lived in a graveyard. He was alone. He was abandoned. He was dirty. He was unwanted. He was an outcast. People thought, he just as well already be dead. He lives out there in the tombs anyway. Then they found out they couldn't bind him because he was so strong, he broke the chains. They found out that, and that's something you do to an animal more so than a human. They found out that he damaged himself, cutting himself with rocks. If you look at the picture in the bulletin, it shows his arms are bleeding. So they didn't want to have anything to do with him. But he really wasn't so much bound by chains. He couldn't be bound by chains. This man was bound by the demons, the darkness. He's crying out for help, I'm sure. Nobody's coming to help him. I don't know what he's eating. Hurting himself, and would probably hurt anyone that came around him. And the people knew that. And that's why they left him alone. And that is the person that came running up to Jesus Christ. That person that no other human wanted anything to do with. They probably made him go out there and live amongst the tombs because they didn't want him in town because he was hurting other people. That's the person that came running up to Jesus Christ, completely possessed by many, many demons. That enemy, those demons, can be cruel, can be malicious. And we probably know people who have demons. We probably know people, maybe not as bad as this guy, but you think about it, demons could be things such as drug addiction, pornography, adultery, self-absorption, loneliness, fear even, anxiety, severe anxiety, a lot of things. But this guy and people with those problems are chained in sin and bound by the demons that possessed him. People you can't trust for some reason. You try to figure out why. Well, I'm afraid they'll hurt me. Doesn't that make you sin, thinking that of them? You think of people who live in poverty. And you think, well, they could do something to better themselves instead of trying to help them. People that live in poverty don't think about living in poverty. They think about how alone and sad they are because they don't have the things that we have. People who are always sad or angry and not joyful. We don't want to show them any affection because we don't think that they will reciprocate and show that same affection to us. These kind of people live in a broken world and they don't know love. So they're outcasts, just like this man was. Nobody wanted to go where this guy was for any reason. But Jesus does. I imagine he made them land the boat there for that very reason. Because he knew that he had a mission there. There was something that he needed to do to show his disciples. That we can care for and take care of the outcast and the people who are living with demons. Everybody you meet, just like this guy, has two traits in common with us, with you. They were made in the image of God, and they're sinners and in need of love and grace. Everybody you meet has those two characteristics, just like you do, just like this guy did. That man is like some of us and some people we know in so many different ways, bound by demons and needing Jesus, just like you, just like me. But he's not a lost cause. And neither are the people you know that need Jesus Christ. They're not lost causes. We're all tainted by sin and with sin in those things that I mentioned a few minutes ago, those addictions and a lot of other things that are going wrong in our lives. We're broken, we're vulnerable. Some people are trapped in a rebellion with God and they turn their back on Him. That, like so many of the people I read about in our announcements that were raised in a Christian home, and then they rebel and they turn against God. And then later they find out that that's not the right thing to do. They become slaves to that wickedness that possesses them. But this guy ran to Jesus. He didn't just walk to him, he ran to him, despite what the demons were probably telling him to do. And then when he gets to Jesus, the demons are the ones that are controlling the narratives. It's not the man. The demons are the ones that are talking to Jesus. They give him honor and reverence. They kneel, they fall down in front of him and call him the Son of the Most High God. Don't torment us, which, like I told you, sounds like a prayer more than anything else. They called him the Son of God. And if we don't do that, we're just as bad as those demons. We don't acknowledge that Jesus is the Son of God. We're just as bad as all those demons. And they were pleading for mercy. Don't torment, don't torture us. Don't. And one of the translation says, don't torment us. Jesus asked him, what's your name? And he says, we're called Legion because we are many. A legion in the Roman army was 6,000 soldiers. So there were thousands of demons possessing this guy. That reminds me of the first, it didn't matter how many demons there were. Hundreds of thousands of demons versus Jesus cannot win. Didn't matter how many there were. And they knew that. That reminds me of the books that I'm reading. I'm at the end of book 2 of a 3-book series called Chronicles of the Host by Brian Schaefer. It tells the history of before the creation through the birth of Jesus in the eyes of the angels. It starts with the angels in heaven before earth was created and how they celebrated when earth was created and how Lucifer got corrupt and got all these other angels to go with him and God expelled them from heaven, and then how and then the Garden of Eden and how God says that the seed of this woman will redeem man for me. And the rest of the time the demons, the bad angels that were kicked out of heaven, are trying to keep that seed of Eve from ever being born. They try to corrupt Moses, Abraham, David. And it tells in their eyes how they're trying to keep Jesus from ever being born. And then after Jesus is born, they're trying to keep him from coming back, just like they're doing today. They're constantly thinking, even though they know Jesus Christ is the Son of God, and that God and Jesus has power over them and there's nothing they can do to stop it. And the books, they're constantly losing battles. Like they're trying to kill Moses when he's a baby. And Moses gets put in a basket and goes down the river and ends up in Pharaoh's house. And then they try to corrupt Moses and the people when they're crossing the sea and they're in the wilderness for 40 years and trying to corrupt David and all of it. And you read those books and you think, this guy's pretty smart. He's taking the stories that we read in the Bible and he's putting them in the eyes of the angels and he's showing us, well, I remember that. That happened. Why? The bad angels caused that to happen. They're very interesting, but this reminded me of that. But there's no evil, past, present, or future, that can survive or triumph over Jesus Christ. They can't stand his presence. They can't stand his name. And before Jesus even said a word, this demoniac man pled with him. But those demons knew that they could not survive in Jesus' light. There's no sin that can keep you from Jesus. There's no addiction that can keep you from Jesus. He knows. And he's waiting for you to run to him. He can triumph over all the evils in our lives. We live in a broken world. Jesus lived in this world, but Jesus never sinned. He took our sin and he marched to that cross and he shed his pure blood on that cross to give us our righteousness and our salvation. He knew he had to do that. And in doing so, Jesus satisfied the wrath of God against sinning human beings and gave us a way out. Didn't he? He gave us a way out of the demons and the sin in our lives. Faith in Jesus can set you free from your demons and the darkness. After this guy got rid of all the demons, the people saw him and they couldn't believe it. They didn't even know who he was because he was completely different. Now, the demons have tried many times to take over my body, and a few times they probably have. But Jesus has always been there waiting for me to come back. And I've always run back to him, and he's always revived me and taken the demons away from me. It happens to all of us. He's done that for me many times in my life. And he can do that for you. He can do that for you and your sin and your demons, whatever they may be. You should be running to him. Let him unbind you from those sins and those demons. If he's already done that for you, tell somebody. Tell them, come to this church, see what's going on. See what's going on in your life and in this community and the things that this church is doing for you. If he has not done that for you, get down on your knees and pray that he will. Invite people to come see what Jesus is doing in your life if you've already ran to him and gotten down on your knees and asked for him to forgive you. Amen.